What's up, everyone? So I asked you what you wanted me to make with the Dewalt planer that we're going to review within the next couple days, the DW735, and you said a cutting board. Here's what you're going to need for this project. Very simple. Let's get it started. Alright, I think this is one of the easiest projects that anyone can make. We're going to use a Dewalt planer on this, but there's other methods that you can use to smooth these things out. I just think the Dewalt planer is going to be the best, and that's what you wanted to see. Now, I think the hardest thing about this project is actually finding the wood. We're making this out of maple and one strip of walnut. I could not find cherry anywhere in the Ohio area for some reason. But the three best woods to make a cutting board out of is the maple, the walnut, and the cherry, because they're tight grained woods and they're not very porous. Now, the reason I'm using one strip of walnut is because I didn't have two strips. I had one left over, but I am going to use this to break up the monotony of the maple. Now, each board is 1 inch by 2 inches. The board is going to be 10.5 inches wide and 21 inches long. But we're going to cut these a little bit longer, and I'll show you why here in a bit. But we're going to change out our saw blade because this has been used a little while. We don't want to take big chunks out of our wood. So get a nice saw blade, at least 60 tooth. You want a fine finish. Now, even though our board is going to be 21 inches long, we're going to make these board lengths a little bit longer. We're going to go about 22, 23 inches to compensate for mistakes. And you don't have to be as exact when you're going to make these boards. So make the boards a little bit longer, and I'll show you how to fix that at the end. So all you got to do now is slice and dice. Now we're going to end up with about 13 boards of this maple here. And again, make sure your saw blade is sharp. You want at least 60 tooth so you don't start chopping up those ends. Now you can see on this piece of maple right here, that's exactly why we cut these a little bit longer, because if you end up with something like that where the paint's coming off of that saw blade, you're going to chop that off at the end anyway, and by the time you're done, that paint's going to be gone. So definitely want to cut those boards a little bit longer. Let's cut the rest of these out. Again, we'll end up with about 13 of these maple strips and then the one strip of the walnut. Now that you got all of your wood cut, all you have to do is glue them and clamp them together. Now we're going to take these, we're going to look and see what matches, what looks good. Some of the grain is different on some of these boards, some of the color is different. You can see right here there's a little bit of a mess up on the piece of that wood right there. Luckily we cut these long enough that we can chop that end off and we're not going to lose length on our board. That is why you want to cut those boards longer. Alright, now that we have our maple, we want to find out where we want our one piece of walnut to go. And again, we're rearranging those boards. We want those colors to be spread out throughout the board. I think that walnut's going to look really good the fourth piece down. We're just going to go with that, and now we're going to glue these up. Now if you had a couple pieces of cherry, which I wish I had, but again for some reason can't find it anywhere in Ohio, I think that would have looked really nice, maybe adding a couple stripes in there. You can do whatever you want with these. You can add wood, different woods. It just looks really nice and really makes your own design. That's what I love about these. So let's lay these flat out on the table here, and now we're going to glue them up, make it nice and secure. That glue is actually going to be stronger than the wood. Once you bond those together, they're not going anywhere. Now before you start gluing these, make sure that you have your clamps ready to go. We're using a couple Dewalt clamps here. What that's going to do is pull those really nice and tight. You want to make sure that you have your glue ready and a brush as well. All you're going to do now is start laying glue down on each stripe. Make sure that you have enough on this that it's going to spread evenly in the entire board. If you don't, they won't stick together correctly. So don't worry about going too heavy on the glue. It'll clean up later. Now once you start getting all that glue spread out on each board, start putting them together loosely. Just again, make sure that you put enough glue on that. It doesn't matter if it starts squirting out the top or the sides. It's not a big deal. You actually want that. So again, brush it on. Put those boards together, nice loose fit, and then we'll clamp them down. Now once you get these glued up, you're going to have to let this set for about 8 hours at least. You definitely want that glue to make a tight Bond. Speaking of Type Bond, that's the glue that I'm using here. We're not sponsored by them. I just like Type Bond because it dries quickly. It really makes a good bond, and yeah, it just works really well. So it's easy to put on. Alright, there's our piece of walnut. Better make sure that that's where you want it in the board, because once you do this, that's it. There's no going back on it. And our last board, let's glue that up. Put that together here. Alright, once you get that last board on there, just make it to the point where it's square. It does not have to be perfect. Remember, we made these a little bit longer, so we're going to cut them down anyway. So let me add a clamp just to tighten that up a little bit. I'll pull that out and I'll add my Dewalt clamp. Try to put those out a little bit further towards the end of the board so it really pulls everything in. And then we're just going to pull that out. We're going to tighten up that middle real nice and tight. You're going to see that glue oozing out all over the place. It's going to be a mess. It's going to work out in the end, trust me. Now again, you want these to dry for at least 8 hours. If it is not dry, you're going to end up with one heck of a mess, and all of your hard work and money is going down the drain. So I'm just going to put these up on the clamps here. I'll let them sit overnight. They should be ready to go first thing tomorrow morning. We'll cut the ends off, we'll run it through the planer, and I'll show you a little trick on how to get this super smooth. Alright, it's all dried up. It's ready for the planer. We're going to take this out into the garage. We're going to run this through. Don't worry about all that gabagoo on there. We'll take some of that off before we run it through the planer. But check this out. It's all rough. It's nasty. Even the boards stand up a little bit higher than each other. Even though they're basically the same thickness and the same width, it's hard to get these things perfect. So I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to scrape some of this glue off here. And that way I don't have to worry about it going into the planer and just making a mess all over the place. So it's probably a good idea that you would do that as well. And you can see that we left that walnut standing out a little bit because we're worried about snipe. Now again, this does not have to be perfect. Just take those heavier pieces of glue. You don't want to gouge that board, so be careful with it. Look how fast I'm working. Alright, now it's time for the Dewalt planer. I am going to have a full review on this sometime today or tomorrow for you to see. Once it's done, I'll put a card up above right here. Now what I love about this is you have a little gauge that's going to show you how much you're taking off. We're not going to take off a lot at one time. We only want to take a little bit off, and we want to smooth this out. We want to make it look like glass when it's done. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. We're going to take off about a 1/16 of an inch on this. We're going to run it through a couple times. And again, I got this here a little bit longer just in case we end up with some snipe. You know, those rollers won't come down on this bad boy. And again, even if it does, you have that extra length on that board that's really going to help with that. So let's turn this on, see what it does. I had this plugged into my Ryobi garage door. I'm going to go straight into an outlet. Sorry. Now I ran the first pass here. It came out nice and smooth, but don't worry. I'm going to show you a bunch more passes here. We're going to take down a little bit more, but yeah, it is just glass. That first pass. Look, all the glue is gone. Let's run it again. Now this is the same side that we already ran. We're just taking about a 30-second off. We really want to make this nice and smooth. Alright, I'll tell you what, let's check it out here. We'll put it up on top, and then I will show you the other side that we're going to run. But check that out. Look at that glossy finish, man. Unbelievable how smooth and just awesome that thing takes that wood down and just polishes it up. Just awesome. Alright, let's take this other side down. Gnarly, nasty, glue all over the place. Nothing's even. We're going to run it through the planer again here. And about 30 second, a little bit more than a 30 second here. I'll just run it through. Should end up with the same result. Run it through one more time. We don't want to take too much off. Don't be taking 1/8 of an inch off. Just take smaller passes on this. Alright, let's check this out here. Now this is only one pass, and look at it. I mean, it's like glass on here. We're going to run it through again, and what we're going to do is we're just going to take a very light pass off. We're on the slow mode. Now even if you go fast, it'll still work fine, but we're going slow. We really want this to be smooth as we can make it. Now the fan on this thing, takes those chips and just blows them out. I mean, it's not dust, it's chips. You're going to make a mess on this thing. But what we're going to do is we're going to run this through one more time. Got a nice smooth finish. Now we're going to take this back down to the saw. We're going to cut a 1/2 inch off of each end. There you go. We just cut a 1/2 inch off of each end. We're going to show you a little trick here. Even though now we're completely square, it's pretty much perfect. Even though it feels very smooth, we're going to add a little bit of water to this. I've heard some people say I've made a cutting board before, but even though it was really smooth when I was done working with it, it started getting rough after time. Well, what happens is when you get moisture in that, you're actually going to feel that grain want to pop up a little bit. So the best thing to do is take some water, spread it out over top of that cutting board. Even though it's already smooth, you're going to feel that grain want to rise a little bit, and it's actually going to feel like sandpaper, maybe like a cat's tongue a little bit. Spread water on all of the board, the sides, the back, the front, doesn't matter, and you're going to feel that. It's going to feel really weird. And then you're going to take some 320 or a very light sandpaper, and you're going to wet sand it. Take all of that grain off. You don't have to worry about it coming back on you once you're using this cutting board. Just make it nice and smooth. This is the only time you'll ever have to do this. Now, not only that, when you smooth that top out, you want to do the sides as well. You don't want those very sharp edges. So smooth the sides, smooth the edges, just a nice round over. Make sure you get any nasty on the side where you cut it. Again, sand the top. You want to go with the grain, round those edges over. It's going to give it a really nice finish. Now before you move to the next step, you want this thing to dry out completely. You don't want it wet, you don't want any water on it. I also burned a little name in here for the person I'm giving this to, so you can do that as well. You can put it in the middle of the board, you can make a design, whatever you want to do. But now the finishing step, we're really going to make this pop, and we're going to protect it. We're going to use some cutting board oil, and we're going to use some butcher block conditioner. You can find these at the Home Depot, very cheap actually, and I'll show you how this works. Now first we're going to put on the oil. Put this on pretty heavy. It's going to soak into that wood and it's going to protect it. It's not going to allow moisture in there. It's going to actually keep that board from looking nasty, I guess you would say, after a long time of use. Now if you put this in a washing machine or the dishwasher, this stuff won't last very long. It's only going to last maybe one wash. So I always say hand wash these boards. You can put that oil on. It's probably a good idea to do this maybe once or even twice a year. Now you're going to get that really nice shine coming out on that board. It's going to tie all that wood together, and you can see that walnut starting to pop. Once you do that, let it dry and then put another coat on. You can go against the grain, with the grain, doesn't matter. You want to make sure that you cover that entire board, the sides, the back, the front, the edges, everything. Get that stuff soaked in there and it will dry probably within a half an hour. After that, we're moving on to the next step. Again, 2-3 coats. Check that out. Look how that's starting to pop right there and how that walnut just ties in really nice with that maple. Okay, now let's put on the conditioner here. Now what this does is put a pretty half decent thick coat of protectant on here. So if you're using your knives, you're not going to cut into the wood. You're actually cutting into this, which is almost like a beeswax. And it's also going to protect the blades of your knife. So put this on pretty heavy. You're going to wipe it on just like we did the oil. Now once you get that heavy thick coat on there, it'll dry down. You want to smooth it out, and it won't look like this after it dries. It'll be nice and smooth, have a nice shine to it. And then after it dries, put another coat on. Again, the sides, the back, the front, the corners, everything. Go with the grain on this so you don't have any of those nasty smear marks too. Now again, if you put this in your dishwasher, it will take this, it'll melt it off. Hand wash these boards. This will give it a long lasting protective finish on it. Throw another coat on there, wipe it down. Don't worry about going too heavy. It'll dry and it'll look good. Check that out. Look at that gloss coming out. Really nice shine. Just ties everything together. Check out that walnut. Now if you had cherry on there, you can run a couple different strips. Doesn't matter what you do on these things. They're all going to look really nice. And look how flat and smooth and shiny that is. And now you don't have to worry about any type of food or water getting down into that board and going bad on you. Again, the reason why you're using the walnut, the cherry, and the maple, and that's the most popular woods to use for these cutting boards, is because they're tight grained, right? But the pores on them, they're very small, so it doesn't allow mold to grow in these things. And check it out, there you go. Super simple to make. You can see the different colors of the wood popping here. You just spread them out a little bit, make it look nice, make it look like the way you want it to look in your kitchen. You could have put that walnut right in the middle of the board if you wanted. You could have got another piece of walnut and ran it down. There's another board that we did right there where we used cherry and the maple and the walnut. And not only is it safe, it's protected, it'll last years and years and years, and it looks great. You know, very simple to make. So if you like this video, thumbs up, subscribe, and check us out at Tool Review Zone. We'll be back with more videos soon.